Can we all agree that the map is not the territory?
What?
A map
Can we
is a
all agree
representation
that
of a
maps and
territory,
territories are
or a
not the
sign,
same?
or a symbol.
Maps and territories.
Jurisdiction and a map.
There are maps of territories, and then there's the territory itself. And
Yeah, that's not
the
yeah.
map
That's
of the
just a very
territory
superficial
is
approach.
not the
What you're
territory.
really trying to ask about is about national sovereignty and the right to rule. That's what you're really asking.
That's the deeper question.
Yeah, again, like it's about the right questions, it's not about the right answer.
Are you trying to confuse me, guys?
Want to know a person on the server who's
Thank
been
you.
really wrinkling my
I
balls
love to
lately?
be confused.
Mole.
What? Oh, no, not mole.
That was my first guess.
He
Why
wrinkles
are
my
you
balls
trying to
sometimes.
confuse me instead of guiding me? Why are you so selfish towards me?
What?
Mathematician, I should just watch you debate someone at some point.
Yeah, it's fun.
I don't know. Fight Abysmo or something, I don't know.
Well, Abysmo, are you a communist?
Nope. But
Let's go there.
I can appreciate some communist theses.
What do you
You
mean?
want a revolution?
Boring.
Yes.
Fight each other.
As long as we agree that communism is not an economic theory, then I think
What?
there's
What is it?
Communism
Depends on what you mean.
it's a social theory. It
It's a
tries
so-
to
Would you say it's a socioeconomic theory?
Nope.
No.
No,
Call it
not
Why?
economic.
Nope.
Like you don't think
They
the
don't
labor
understand
the,
economy.
the labor theory of value is like an economic theory?
No, it's not, man.
What is it?
Marx wasn't
It's
an
a social
economist.
theory?
Yeah, it's just a social theory about
Okay, how is the labor
how
theory of
people work
value a
at it.
social theory?
Yeah, it's just to me. I think it's. I mean, I just think it's a theory on how people could behave given a set of economic circumstances. Whereas an
And
economic
the
theory.
theory you're mentioning, it doesn't acknowledge many important factors that later economists, much more respected than the communist ones, analyzed and wrote about.
Much more respected by the communists or by the other ones?
I mean,
Respected by
academics
whom?
that spend years in college and observing and writing books,
Yeah.
and they are respected by academics. I don't
What
fucking
about
care
the
if it's
communist colleges
capitalist or
in China?
no, academic. The people that knows,
Okay. Totally disagree
not
with you.
people that believe in these or that. No, we're talking
I
about
think the labor theory of
people that
value is an
study
economic
and
theory of
know.
value.
Yeah.
The labor theory of value does what?
Yeah. The labor theory of value is an economic theory of is an economic theory.
You don't acknowledge that perhaps it could be incomplete, yet things to be added. Do you consider it to be perfect?
Do I think the labor theory of value is perfect?
Yes. It's like a perfect theory, nothing to be added.
No, not at all. It's a scientific
Okay.
approach.
I was scared. I was thinking this was like a religion, like
No,
a
there's
communist
no
religion
dogma in
where
communism.
Religion?
In fact, communism, and I would say the Chinese above any other culture, is the least dogmatic ideology that you can consider, I think.
well, they are a very interesting psychology because they had such a tough history, and
So the labor theory of value addresses specific economic questions about value, how to determine price, why resources are
yeah, and more
allocated in a certain
importantly, who to
way.
give credit. Yeah, I
It
know.
gives a very detailed explanation of what value really is in capitalism. Whereas the capitalists have their theory of value, which is totally fucking stupid.
Okay.
I mean, it seems to be pretty ironclad.
There's many different capitalists, so you're
It's
generalizing
not
there. But,
ironclad. For
you have
example,
libertarians, you have liberals, you have so many different capitalists, but okay.
It's
Well,
crazy.
the capitalism falls apart from the inside out, and the ultimate like core to capitalism is the value of private property, and the idea that people have a fundamental right to private property. Now, what kind of private property? That that is where the capitalists decide, like start having their schisms or whatever. Well, maybe we should have people, or maybe we should have um, tons of oil, and maybe we should have water as private property. There's a
Well,
lot of people who disagree with that are
when
quote
I think
unquote
about private
capitalists.
property, what I like to do is divide it between private property that you own with honor, and then private property that you just own because of your buying power or other factors. Like, for example, let's say we give stock, and this stock pays dividends, and the people is rich. Let's say it's the stock of a factory. Do you think that a working class person that spent 30 years working in the factory and then he got stock from the factory doesn't deserve to own that and get the dividends after he
That's
stopped
not what I'm
working?
saying at all. I think every communist, again, communism is not dogmatic. I think every communist understands the role of capitalism. Like a
Okay,
communist is
yeah.
not going to say that like capitalism shouldn't exist, right?
No, but
Capitalism
what I'm
has a
saying is that
role.
there's private property. I like to divide it between the one people deserve, and the one that maybe they don't deserve, but they get it because we respect laws. So, and the problem with communists is that even the private property that you get with honors, they don't respect it and they steal, and that's it. That's one of the main issues. They don't fucking care. They just steal and redistribute. They don't ask. You know,
I think it sounds
they
like you
even
have a
did pogroms
misunderstanding of like
to
what communism really
justify
is.
using Jewish
Sounds like everybody
survivors.
has a misunderstanding. You guys can't get your shit
That's
straight.
Guys,
fair. Yeah.
man,
So I think if we want to understand communism, instead of like listening to these people like say what communism is, I think we should look at what communists do. Right now, the number one
oh
country that's
yeah,
ruled by, if I may,
I agree with
there's a
that.
country that's ruled by communists where overwhelming literally every single person in their government, China specifically, every single person in their government identifies as a communist. Whether they're lying or not is something that is completely private, and we have no evidence of,
Well,
other
why
than
have
the
they
fact they
made like
publicly
capitalist
come out and they call
reforms since
themselves
the
communists.
1970s? It's
Now,
weird.
if I may, this country has managed to disregard certain types of private property. The main one that they've disregarded the most is intellectual property. In the age of information, intellectual property is supposed to be the thing that capitalists make the most profits out of. But
Is that why they steal our ideas?
unfortunately, the communists are ahead of the curve, right? And
Because
they
they
just
steal our ideas.
yes, exactly. And thank goodness they do, because now everything I own is made from China,
What I
and it's
Support
agree,
that.
great and
what
it's
I agree
cheap.
Support
with
that.
communist
Have
views
they
is
have
that
they
there should be
innovated?
justice,
Yes, they
So
have.
giving
What do you
some
mean?
intellectual
What the
property
fuck
to
do you
the
mean that they
laborers
innovated?
China's doing so amazing. They
so
have to
they make
resort to
some
corporate
income.
espionage to up their economy and like compete with us in the market.
what have they recently invented? I'm actually kind of curious.
What have they recently done to what?
Invented
They
like
make
cable.
planes. They make they make high-speed rails. Do
They
you know who else?
invented planes.
No, dude, I'm not talking about inventing, right? I'm talking about
Yeah,
making
but
shit.
okay. So
Hold
the
on,
people
real
that
quick, if I may respond.
respect person. Okay.
Okay, if I may respond. For example, I know Boeing is a company that is famous for making their planes, right? They have innovated a lot significantly in that industry. But as a result of their monopolization, they haven't made any planes in like 20, 30 years. They're just literally
Yeah, they're losing
existing as
money.
a company, waiting for the profits to just die out, and then all the people will just
We have
self-destruct
antitrust
themselves.
laws in the U.S. You know that.
Yes, what we do. Yes, that's
No, but
true.
it's
But
not
we
gonna
again,
die
again,
out.
we
It's
do
ready to
not
go.
manufacture. We do not manufacture planes. We don't manufacture high-speed rails. We don't manufacture
Is
transportation systems like China does. China has a better transportation system,
Yeah, but
and it's
China
be,
is doing
and
it
they
because they are
innovated that.
adopting
They didn't steal
capitalism,
it from us. They have a better system than
bro.
us.
They are not
You
doing
can't
that because
steal
they are
something from us and
communists.
make it
was
better and
real
say that
quick.
it's stealing.
I'm sure you've heard this example, but like, had did the Soviet Union
improve with the car as well as America did?
But it's so funny that he's saying that
I'm
China is
talking
doing
about
this
like
or that,
2025
and China is
communism.
doing it because they adopted capitalism.
So what?
They didn't adopt it.
Okay. China
Communism
is
in
the
the
best.
age of information is a very different communism than a communism in just like the
All right.
post-industrialization era. Like
Who
Karl
will
Marx
innovate?
had very different problems and solutions than the
Who will
I
innovate?
don't know. It makes no sense
Who
what
will
he's
what?
saying, and he's using the
Who will
example
innovate?
of China,
Who
when
will
China
make
adopted
new
economy
things? Like
capitalism
who will invent?
China is making new things.
Inventing.
using
What did
capitalism.
they
I
invent?
don't invent. It's so funny because it's an invention if we improve on if Boeing improves upon the Wright brothers
Okay, fine.
plane
Yeah.
by
What did
applying
they
a jet
improve on?
engine. But if China takes a high-speed rail and throughout their entire network that goes at a rate faster, far conceivably faster than any railway system in the Western hemisphere, then like that's not inventing things, right? That's
Okay, there we
really
go.
cool,
Like
you know?
they have faster high rail
They have better
speed than
everything,
anyone
dude.
else.
They have better everything, dude. You name it, dude. Name your industry, and I will tell you China has a better industry.
Quality of life.
I mean, if
Quality of
China's
life?
so great, why aren't you over there in
How many percent of
China,
Americans are living
mathematician?
paycheck to paycheck?
How
And
many
how many
percent
Chinese
of
people are
Chinese
living
How
paycheck to
Language
paycheck?
without
barriers, perhaps.
Who's
without a
suffering?
car or anything like that?
China's
Mathematician,
good,
why
man.
aren't you over in China right now?
Why did it
What a
take them
stupid
5 years
That's
to perfect the ballpoint pen? From
No, I mean,
2012,
I'm just
John
curious if
Intro.
you've got
Hold on.
this raging
Mathematics.
hard-on for
Mathematics.
China, and you're
This
not there. Why aren't you
tell
in
me
this utopia that you so... Yeah, I mean, it's the greatest place in the world. Why aren't you over
hold
there?
on.
Because the goal of
Mathematics.
communism is not, I'm a communist, by the way. The goal of communism is not to like isolate the communists from the capitalists. The goal is to transition our way out of capitalism in a humanist way, in a way that values
Oh, so
humans.
you actually think that China is being run as a communist country?
It's
Every
insane. That's
single
what I'm
person
saying.
in their
Yeah.
government
He's saying
It's
China is
identifies
so
not a
good when
as
all
a
that
communist
he
country at
did is
all. It's
adopting capitalism.
completely... They have a great disparity in wealth. Are you out of your mind? Yeah, it's all
He is
fair
out
over
of his
there.
mind. He's insane.
okay.
Everybody's living in
Dude.
the
So
same house with the same
that's not
car.
the goal. Again, a
Hey,
communist, if I may, a
mathematics.
communist is not someone who just says capitalism is evil and we should just abolish capitalism worldwide.
He's
A communist is way smarter than that, way more scientific than that, right? Don't like
he's trying to create a new, like a
Please, I
no, no,
want to
no.
modern
hear
If
what
I
he has
reform
to
communism.
say.
Classless
Trying to create
society,
what
right?
if I
I
may,
would
capitalism.
like to hear mathematician's
I
answer.
I think a
I
communist
want to sing
country
the
would
praise
focus, I think a
real quick.
communist country like China would focus on developing products, things, specifically using capitalism by producing things that don't require us to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week every single week to survive. And the goal of communism is to create a productive force outside of
Here it
the
comes.
human working class ultimately. Like that's the
The
modern
Bible speaks
communism.
about this guy. The fool doesn't want to
So
be.
if I may
He
say
doesn't
one
want
more
to
Won't
be
thing,
even let
entertained and
him to
understood. He just want
finish.
to
one
How
more
come
talk
thing.
none of
himself.
you can shut the hell up for a second and let him finish?
I think it's super
He's never
important
gonna
to
finish. He's
acknowledge
just
that China is the number one producer
Oh,
of
trust me, he loves
robots.
finishing. He loves cooming.
Yeah, that China's the
He's
number
a
one
coomer. You
producer.
can tell.
They're the number one producer of robots. They're going to be the number one producer of robots because they know what those robots are going to do for the world, and they
So,
understand that if
Because
you
they
want to
will.
bring
okay,
about communism, you need to
mathematician.
change the landscape of our
I do see
environment.
what they're saying. You're not like, okay, so China's making all of the robots and they're doing it better than everybody else,
Yep.
and they're great at it. And what does that say about China? Do you think that makes them
That means
better than other people because they're
yeah, it
so big
does.
into these robots?
Well, it does
Why?
actually. Yeah,
Why are
because
you so for the robots?
He's a
well, I think we all are, right? Come
mathematician.
on, I want my
Mathematician.
fucking robot.
I don't care about the robots.
I
I'm
think you
really
do.
actually I don't really have a dog in this fight. I could care less about the robots.
Do you
you know
I
drive
you
a
don't
know
see
that
why
car?
you're
communism
so
works like that.
invested.
Do you drive
What
a
even is
car?
the thesis here? I'm gonna quite sure I'm
Wait, I want to
tracking.
answer the questions. Yes, I drive a car. Yes, I do drive a car.
Okay,
What is
do
the
you
thesis
consider
here? Is
your
it about like
car like
export controls, about
a
tariffs?
sort of
You
robot?
don't
No,
have to
Social,
know we
just
produce
a
so many
collectivist and far right.
same, man. It's the same
Mathematician is
shit.
just
It's the
laying
same
out his version
propaganda
of
lies.
communism.
I think it's a modern one. I think that's one that's more compatible with like the communism that the Chinese are
I do
proposing.
drive a car, but what does that have to do with robots? I'm
Well, so
curious.
No.
I think a car is a
Nothing.
form
It's
of
just saying
is a form of logistics in the
nonsense.
marketplace. It's literally
I mean,
transporting
but
humans
how
and
does that
resources.
relate to robots? Okay.
Well, that's what robots do. They
Doesn't
transport
say
logistically goods and humans
But
and
I'm
resources.
the one operating the car. It's not doing it on its own
Yeah.
volition.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think we're ultimately going to be in control of the robots too.
So what would be the point of the robots? So so you're gonna have all these
Well, what's
robots
the
that
point
do
of
all
a
this
car?
work, but we're gonna be in charge of them. So they're just like.
Yeah.
So what?
I think
I thought they were
mathematician.
supposed to replace everybody,
No,
and
no,
we would just be all dead, and the robots
his
could run
point-
things.
his
Dead.
point
I'm not
is
gonna
But we're
that-
still
die.
gonna have to oversee them.
Whoa.
Like
How are we gonna
what?
die? It's
his
not like
point is
Skynet. I'm
that
sorry.
the labor landscape is going to change through technology. That's his point.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah,
Can I
and that's
ask you,
the goal
mathematician,
of
are
the
you
communist.
So is the
structural?
dating landscape.
Are
Its
We're gonna be able to
consequences
date
have
robots.
been a disaster for the human race.
It's gonna be replacing you, lady.
So mathematician,
Obviously, that's the goal.
would you consider yourself a structural Marxist still? Are you in that camp?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. Like, I mean, I still take Hegel's like
robots have to do with communism, though? This is where I'm also
well,
at a
He's
loss.
part.
well,
He's part
because
of
the
the
Industrial
propaganda.
Revolution
He's
is the
doing
idea of
propaganda. No
replacing
Fidel
the
Castro in
worker
Cuba.
with
He
machines.
makes propaganda about Cuba, saying, "Oh,
Yes,
we make
that's
so
what the
many
Industrial
doctors. We
Revolution
produce so
is.
many doctors. Cuba's so
But what
good.
does that
We
the
have
Industrial
college,
Revolution
bro. Your
I
country's
can't hear
was
two people at the same
the
time.
creation of the assembly line, which propelled capitalism.
What he's
It had
saying
Correct.
nothing
makes
to do
no
It
with
sense.
did.
It's pure
communism.
propaganda. That's what he's
Well,
doing.
hold
Propaganda
on, real
of
quick.
Soros.
Capitalism is just a. Do you believe in trickle down economics?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, I kind of do. I kind of do that. Capitalism is
To an
fundamentally a way of
extent,
I don't think
trickling.
any of
not.
those Reaganomics policies ever worked.
In
I'm not
certain
talking about. Well,
environments, it's
I think it
Reaganomics
just
is a
led.
global
It just kicked
philosophy.
the can down the road and led to more inflation.
I think you're just looking at an isolated thing, just America in that sense. You sent all the businesses to China, and their working class was built up as a result of Reaganomics.
But have you
Just
really looked
just a real
at
quick,
the working class in China? Have you seen the living conditions of
in
some
its
of
they
the
work really hard. Yeah,
lower?
that's my biggest criticism of China is that they have a lot of
But you were
they
just,
our
I mean, you're
average work
sitting
week
here
is 52 hours.
putting them on this pedestal of how great they are and how it's wonderful over there. But
Yeah, but
people are
let him lay
dying
out
in the
his
factories
let him lay
working
out his position
20-hour
first.
days and living in like a closet. And it's like,
I
yeah,
think their
yeah,
places look a lot
China.
nicer than America's. Come on. They're have you seen their infrastructure?
Yes,
They
of
have
course. Like, yes,
skyscrapers
up with
and
the
each
I've
of
seen
these
the
buildings.
tofu
with the
buildings. The
people,
tofu buildings are pretty
the
good.
higher echelons may enjoy better things than America, but
No,
our
it's not just the
poor.
higher echelons. Those buildings take
Oh my gosh! Like
hundreds of millions of people, you know?
I don't know. You're. I don't understand why you just don't go over to China.
I don't know why we went to that part of this conversation, but anyways.
He doesn't speak,
Because
man.
you're
He
so
speaks English,
invested in
man.
this country. Like, I've been to Korea. I lived in Korea for a year. I've lived in the Middle East. I've lived in different countries. If you're so invested in these countries, go over to them and experience them.
I mean, I have this thing called the internet where I can experience all sorts of things without having to go
But you
there. You
don't
know what I mean?
actually really get to experience it at that level. That is an absolute lie.
Well, I guess
be
if
there
I
in
read a
real
research
time,
paper from
in
a
the
professor,
present.
I don't actually get to see what they say about the research paper from the professor. But I still read the research paper because I can't like meet with every professor and talk about their research, you know?
But you
So
can get on a plane and go to China.
Don't worry, we're all socialists here. Just authoritarian right socialists with a little bit of collectivist values. Okay. Don't worry.
If I may, though, capitalism does have a role. Capitalism is supposed to lift us away from feudalism and spread the wealth, right? By people having the ability to own property, not just the people at the top, like the king or the queen or whatever. Now everyone can own property, right? Everyone has private property rights.
Exactly.
Well, hold on. I think though that the intent behind capitalism is the most important thing. When, for example, Americans burn oil, right? When Americans burn oil, we use it to go skiing in the lake, or we use it to travel to on a vacation, or to fly a plane to go visit our family, right? When China burns oil, they use it to build more cars than electric cars in the rest of the world, and solar panels and shit.
Yeah,
Right.
because they
So
don't have
that's
Nobody
they
why,
don't
goes
have
if I
access to
may,
skiing
energy.
in
if I may,
China. They ski in China though. They use their
yeah, but
planes
they
to travel to visit family.
hold
You're
on.
just
Their
making a
planes
bunch of
are way more
bizarre.
green than ours, for the record. They have way higher standards on their
Oh yeah,
planes.
Did you
are you
see the
are you
thing where
just
they start
like
spray painting rocks on
They
the sides
actually
of
sell
mountains?
more planes globally
Hold on.
than the US does, by
Mathematics.
the way. So
You
like
just
this is
in
reminded me of
plane
something of
infrastructure,
China.
they have
is this
Hold
outcompeted the
guy
on,
US
just
hold on.
already.
trolling people? Talking
Dude,
about how China
mathematics.
is better with
Mathematics. Have
pollutions
you
than America?
Minus 1,000
mathematics?
social credit for that
Hold
one.
on. Mathematics. Have you heard of the ghost cities and like the
Yes, I
fact that
have.
like the local municipalities are planting rocks on the side of mountains and spray painting them green? Have you heard of that? So the
Yeah.
federal like environmental person says it's like healthy at a glance.
I mean, the ghost towns, most people don't live in.
Yeah, yeah. That the Uyghurs and the Tibet, right?
1,000
That's
social
all.
credit just for that statement.
Inner Mongolia.
Being
We
Chinese.
know all this,
Being
but
Chinese,
like
I
fucker.
have no issues
mathematics.
with China as a country. It's a
Hold
beautiful
on, hold
place,
on.
beautiful
Guys,
people.
On
It
the
has
Chinese,
its
dude, let's
ups, it
not
has its
shotgun
downs.
This
mathematics.
conversation is getting boring, by the way.
I advocate for child
But
labor camps.
Okay,
Look,
okay,
Like,
calm
all
down.
of these
Mathematics,
things have
yeah, it
like been
is a
addressed
pollution.
globally, by the way.
Vape. I want
mathematics. Oh
plastic
my
vape.
goodness,
People are
guys,
just trying. Yeah,
stop,
it's
Yeah, can we
not.
stop,
have like some
It's not a good
moderation, please?
conversation.
I
guys.
am
You guys
Ma-
The two
blasting in my
people who are
ears.
talking over each other are both moderators.
mathematics.
a moderator,
Oh,
mathematician.
great. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
all
fine.
three of us are moderate.
Mathematician,
Or
You
I
no,
guys
wait,
can
did
yeah,
like
never mind.
talking
moderate a
to
little
you,
bit.
and I do enjoy having you here. I
I
think
gotta
you're
stay
good for the
in the
room.
room.
All right.
A Donald Trump
Mathematics.
hat
Like,
on the inside it says "Made in China." Yeah,
what?
what's up?
Do you have any sources like the people in like China have like a better standard of living than like other countries,
You think they have a better standard of living?
I can give you
or
surveys
happier?
if you'd like. Would you the problem is you're just gonna reject them, right?
Not necessarily, but like either happy. I
Hi,
I mean,
Matt.
would you
We're still
accept
either
talking.
happiness
Matt,
or
we're
like
still
standard
talking
of
about
living.
communism.
Oh, stop.
Okay, yeah, let me give you if you want to study, I'll give you some shit.
Sure,
This is from Harvard.
Oh, it's Kit.
but
Hey, Jib, are you here?
Okay, this
but
is a
like
long-term study. It's one of the longest term studies and also one of the most international collaborative studies on
how do
how Chinese citizens think about their country. I think you should read it. I think it's educational. I think you should think about how people criticize their own country in China, and I think you should think about how the people consider their country in China. And I think this study does a pretty good job.
I am curious, like, what do you think about like like this is somewhat like a side point, but like you did when you say green, you reminded me of like local municipalities just using green spray paint to paint their mountains green.
Listen, bro. That's
My
what
goodness,
China.
Puppet, stop like 1 point at a time for mathematics. What?
Yeah, I think all of this is, to be honest, very nitpicky things with loose evidence that
Okay. I mean, there's
that are
video recordings of like the spray paint.
I genuinely like. I'm sure there are video recordings of people in San Francisco shooting up heroin, right?
San
Yeah,
Francisco
the
is
biggest.
terrible.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so
mean that's a big issue there.
like the idea that like, oh, there's like these plants that have green spray paint on them and there's video proof of it. Oh my god. let's look at let's weigh that with the let's weigh those cons with the pros. How about that, right?
I like to weigh the pros and cons of child labor. Okay.
So
I don't think.
So if I go to,
I
you
think
didn't realize
America has the biggest child labor problem in the world.
Oh, it 100% does. I agree with you. But
So they don't have this. So when they do, my whole original point was that when China does capitalism, which again communists acknowledge the role of capitalism. When China does capitalism, they have it with a very intent goal. And when America does capitalism, it has a very different goal with a different outcome in mind. And I think that because of those differentiations in mindsets, that China in the long run is going to prove itself to be more economical about capitalism, and it's going to supersede the U.S. And they're going to use that to eventually maintain their communist goals. They're totally communist over there, by the way. Like they call themselves communists.
Do you think the main focus of what they're doing right now is just building infrastructure?
Yes, worldwide.
Okay.
You have to if you want to. So here's the thing: if you want if you want a global, international, proletarian working class that is on the same playing field, then you need the infrastructure globally to allow everyone to participate in capitalism in a humane way, and also in a green way, in a way that doesn't destroy our environment. And I think China has proven all of those fronts.
Are they building nuclear power plants?
Yes.
Okay.
They already sorry. They're the leader of nuclear power plants.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I think they ran a fusion plant just last week. And they broke the record. I believe it was longer than 10 seconds. So the amount of energy that they're producing is far superior than it is here. But that's because in their country, they value their education system way more than we value our education system. In the US, we teach our kids to be stupid. We teach them that there's 5,280 feet in a mile, which is confusing on purpose. But in their country, they can, they have a very centralized education system, and they somehow produce PhDs that are able to take all of the tests that we try to provide here that prove that our people are smart. They just pass them with flying colors over there in masses. So they're smarter. They're smarter. They got better shit. Maybe they don't have the innovation that capitalism maintained in the 1940s. Capitalism led to the development of the car and the computer and all this shit. But capitalism has a certain role. We're running into what's called the postmodern era, where we no longer innovate in capitalism or communism. We just replace human labor with robots.
We're on the cusp of it, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think yeah, structural Marxism is pretty interesting theory. It's like a middle position, but ultimately I think like I mean it's vulnerable to critiques. It's just like being in like another form of capitalism. So like it's really hard to differentiate how really distinct it is from capitalism. Um, I think that could be true. Like we'll see what happens, but for me it seems like even if it were the case that China is able to innovate in a direction where they become more and more energy independent because of necessity, like they don't have access to a lot of fossil fuels to get them there. So, obviously necessarily they're gonna have to
Russia.
rely on like green sources of energy. But it's still gonna be a power issue. So I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, or
I
how many
mean,
robots it's
so
gonna take for them to like keep production equitable for
it's
the amount of people that they have. The other question is how they're gonna fucking feed that many people, and how are they gonna power all of the robots? That's a lot of
I
automation to just assume is just gonna happen naturally.
do you think they could like somehow like take a boat to like Africa, mine a bunch of uranium, and then like have that be for the entire grid in China? Oh, you say like they're running out of fossil fuels, and like they could just
You know China.
like
You know
use your
China
right.
imports like 80% of all of its energy.
Yeah,
You know who
the
the number.
oil
You
reserves
know
that they
who the
have
number one.
is only for
You know
80
you know the
days.
number one exporter of energy to China is. Do you know who it is?
Saudi Arabia,
Wrong. It's
two
America.
thirds, two
No,
thirds.
it's wrong. It's America.
It's okay. Well, doesn't two thirds of the oil that's getting imported to in China go through like the Suez Canal, or is that next to Singapore? I know, like America could just like the canal next to Singapore, they could just block that, and like two thirds of China's oil would be cut off.
The only reason why we allow those energy trades to happen is because they're literally fueling American manufacturing in China. That's what was going on. But now that there's no
Yeah,
more, yeah,
we could just block the the canal next to Singapore, and two thirds of China's oil would be blocked off.
because we've controlled. I mean, we're the ones that are like the major exporter of energy to China. We know exactly how much energy they need.
I mean, if they just like somehow possibly rapidly build nuclear power plants, then they can, they can take that resources somewhere else, or they can get their energy from somewhere else.
I find it really questionable whether they can sustainably get to a point where they could like basically create a robot utopia.
Sorry, say that last part again.
I find it highly questionable that they're going to be able to sustainably build a robot empire.
Like, what do you
Like
mean sustainable?
in a sustainable way. Like how are they going to be able to be self-reliant in building the robot empire? Where are they going to get all their
Well, I
energy
think
from?
their infrastructure is very sustainable. Like, I think like all the what they have right now, the capital that they have, like,
The capital?
yeah,
You
the
mean just like
capital.
money?
No. The stuff that makes stuff, the machines. I'm using a Marxist lens here. When I say capital, I mean the stuff that makes stuff.
Infrastructure,
Well, yeah, I see it as infrastructure, like a form of
the
infrastructure.
factories.
Yeah, the factories, the things that make stuff. Like they have so much of that, right? That like even if you got rid of all the Chinese and they just like somehow magically like were uplifted by the what is it
Rapture.
uh yeah, the rapture, thank you. Like let's say they're all gone, right? They would somehow manage to like still produce stuff. You know what I mean? Like they have so much stuff that like are just
All
constantly doing stuff that like they're at that
half of the
point.
Indians will just move over and just start using the factories.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, but like honestly, a lot of these factories are self-run almost. You know, like they literally just like there's just a couple people in there just guiding the robots to do the stuff that they, and that's what their robots are doing, right? In the US, the robots that Elon Musk wants to make are going to be doing your dishes and walking your dog because you're fat and lazy, right? And that is how we burn our oil. And so that's when like to me, I really was a huge supporter of Joe Biden because he sold half of our oil reserves to China. We got paid for it, and China was able to burn that
No,
oil in a more
no.
economically
Well,
green
no. Yeah,
way.
yeah. That's the thing. You're not an American. That's a national security risk. We
I am
sold
an
off our freaking oil
American.
reserves, right? That's why Joe Biden is a traitor.
That's why was he a traitor? Do you think we would burn
Why
our
would he?
oil in
Why would
better
he? Why would
ways?
he sell our freaking national security oil reserves to fucking China like that?
Because they're gonna burn the oil for good
No,
things.
because all the fucking Democrats have already invested into China. You guys are globalists at this point. You guys aren't about
Yeah, it's a
America.
globalist ideology.
No
Yes.
shit.
Yeah. What's wrong with? I'm trying to get to that point.
What do you mean? What's wrong with it, man?
What's wrong with globalism?
Because that contradicts national sovereignty, you dum dum.
Absolutely. National sovereignty
Yeah. So right,
compromises.
you're
Hold on. National sovereignty compromises state sovereignty. State sovereignty compromises
no
local
shit.
city.
Right. You're a
Okay,
terrorist.
so what's wrong with the
You're a
what's
terrorist.
wrong with the?
You're an ideological terrorist, sir.
What the fuck?
What?
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Yeah. You're a national
Globalism
security
is.
risk.
You
Like
It's
you
it's like
value
I
Beijing
swear
above us.
mathematician,
these
I like
people.
you. I like you, but I know that you are led by an ideology, and
Do you know who the Federalists were? Like an American party. It's
yeah,
an
of
American
course.
party. What do you know about the Federalists?
I mean, they're the ones that asked for the Bill of Rights in the first place to be amended.
Okay,
to
what
the
about the
Constitution.
Anti-Federalists? What about the Anti-Federalists?
I'm not as
Are you familiar with their art? You're not familiar with
The
them.
Anti-Federalists.
Well, that's kind of it. That's kind of interesting to me.
The Anti-Federalists were against they were against the formulation of the central bank. So Andrew Jackson was an Anti-Federalist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you know what their arguments were? Why they were anti-federalists?
I've only read the Federalist Papers.
It's because it undermines state sovereignty.
States' rights.
States' rights. Yes. It's literally your argument here.
No.
I can't believe you don't know about anti-federalists, man. It's like your argument.
No, I think you're kind of shifting the goalposts on this.
Federalist is the idea.
I don't think that makes the case.
Make a
I don't think
universal
that makes
law
the
that is
case
applicable
for,
to all states. That's what the anti-federalists believe.
It,
They believe that some states don't have to adhere to the Constitution.
The whole point
Exactly.
of the Federalist debate was that
exactly. So what's the argument against globalism is that it undermines national sovereignty. Well, okay, anti-federalist. You're just a modern anti-federalist, right? You're just anti-federalist with a new name. If you're anti-globalist, right, you're just an anti-federalist at a larger scale.
That connection between like the
I know you're not. That's amazing. Rights. Well, because an anti-federalist, they were hardcore against federalism because they wanted states' rights. They thought that a federal government was going to tell the state what to do, right? And you're sitting here telling me that you would be concerned of a global government telling the American government what to do, right? Do you see the parallel?
I mean, I don't think you see the irony that, you're going to... I mean, that whole debate is kind of what led to the Civil War in the first place, right? So, I mean, are you for
the debate of whether the states can...
Like, are you for, like,
but hold on, whose side are you on? The federal... Are you...
No,
whose side are you on, the Federalists or the Anti-Federalists?
No, at this point, it's a moot point because we had the Civil War. So, like, at the end of the day, I'm a Federalist.
Well, no, there's still a lot of Anti-Federalists in the U.S.
The Civil War is on.
There's still a lot of Anti-Federalists in the U.S. Are you an Anti-Federalist?
No, I'm a Federalist.
Why not?
I don't know why you're so hung up on this part of the debate. I think you're
because there's so much parallel here.
No, there's no parallelism here. You're taking the exception and you're trying to make it the general rule. So you're special pleading.
No, I'm just
for like
drawing
an outdated. It's literally an outdated ideology at that point. Like literally, the whole Civil War was about the abolition of slavery. You couldn't have unilateral like federal policy if you didn't recognize the sovereignty of the federal government.
That's why the Supreme Court exists as a thing, bro.
That's the whole point.
As a federalist one.
You can't have a nation without a federal government.
A federal government.
Federalism was about how to have a more imperfect union. You dum-dum.
No.
Nationalistic.
So federalism is not.
It's a false dichotomy for you to assume that anti-federalism is the position.
Federalists were like
that is for national sovereignty and federalism.
Abysmal. I think you're confused.
No.
The Federalists were also they were also like Protestants, so they followed this guy who was like saying that God's going to bring terror upon the United States if slavery isn't abolished. And that's what actually led them to fight in the Civil War against the Anti-Federalists, was because of that, religious notion that they had. And it was like a wacko Protestant cult or whatever that this guy had started. And then the Anti-Federalists was like, for example, the Southern Baptist Convention that exists today, they descend from the Anti-Federalist side of the whole dispute. But the Federalist side is the reason why our Supreme Court can make shit like Roe v. Wade possible, where every state has to adhere to this decision. But the thing is that you can challenge the federal state. So the states still have some type of rights, but ultimately it's the feds that get to decide.
Okay, Abysmal, I'm glad you posted the thing. Okay, federalism goes beyond states' rights. You're totally right about this, by the way. I'm not trying to criticize you.
In essence,
it's a dual sovereignty system. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So why can't there be a dual sovereignty system between global government versus the nationalistic governments?
Because that's not a real distinction. We don't have an international
But
body.
why is the state versus federal
You have to establish or justify the need for globalism in the first place. Like we don't have like a global legal body.
Well, okay, but that's
who
dude,
establishes right.
I just
Right. How do you establish the sovereignty of an international body? How?
That's fair. That's a great question.
Right.
These
the
are
Christian
all
the Christian position is that the rightful sovereign and ruler is Jesus, like literally.
Sure.
You don't
okay.
have one.
I still okay, that's fine.
That's why it's fundamentally satanic to assume that. Like that's gonna be the Western criticism always.
Okay, so I really do think that you should study anti-federalism because
that it has
you are
nothing
literally
to do with the question between globalism and nationalism. You dum dum.
Okay, buddy. Okay, buddy.
You're like, oh, I just see like these unique intuitive parallels, dude.
I get the
like,
point
there's no
that
intuition.
mathematician's making, but I'm gonna have to disagree.
There's no intuition of like a centralized like global government.
Rejecting globalism does not mean that you're necessarily an anti-federalist.
I'm not. Well, I never said that. I never said that. I'm drawing parallels. I really want to emphasize parallel, right?
Okay.
An anti-federalist is someone who opposed the federal government, the creation of the federal government at the time. I really want to emphasize, though, that they had justifications for why they were anti-federalists, and I'm telling you that you should listen to their justifications because you are making
between the justification that you're doing.
Yes.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So if you ask an anti-federalist and if you ask the anti-federalist presidents and all of their congressmen, right, which you should study your history, you would see them saying literally the same thing you're saying right now, Abismo. Everything is literally the fucking same. Like copy, paste. It's just replace the word country with globe and replace the word state with country.
Yeah,
that's
those
the
are all
parallel.
just virtual distinctions.
Okay, so then you should read their arguments because I'm trying to tell you that you're making their point on a more global scale.
Yeah, but if your concept or notion of globalism is a fake concept, it's not a real concept. I mean, you can't just
do you think federalism is a real concept? Do you think federalism
we don't have a globalized, like recognized global jurisdiction right now?
Right, because the globalists haven't won yet.
Stop shifting
but you said
burden.
the federalists
shifting
won.
the burden again, man. How do you justify like global sovereignty? Where does that come from?
Where does federal sovereignty come from?
You're making a circular argument. At best.
It would come from a global constitution.
We don't. Where's this global constitution?
It doesn't exist yet. Do you realize the anti? Hold on. Do you realize that there were anti-federalists before the U.S. Constitution?
The whole point of the Constitution is the consent by the people, right? It's appealing to the consent of the people.
Do you realize that there were anti-federalists
all the Federalists were
before the U.S.
Constitution? They wanted a Bill of Rights. That's why it was a handshake approval. That's why the Constitution itself was ratified prior to the Bill of Rights.
I agree with your disagreement with globalism, but I don't agree with this argument because the Federalist position was that the majority can't make an opinion on something that rejects the Constitution or rejects human rights or basic
moral
The
question
principles.
had to do The question had to do was how could the Constitution, how could the articles of the Constitution appeal to the consent of the people if the rights of the people were not clearly delineated? That's the whole point.
I'm saying that the right of it's to protect the people. There's no disagreement when it's to protect the people, but it's also a way to protect democracy in itself because democracy is a flawed system. We're not a pure democracy, okay?
That's all just theory.
If we're a pure democracy, the state could vote whether the Constitution would be applicable or not.
Yep. So I really want to emphasize that, like, even though I don't think you're an anti-federalist, I'm not calling you an anti-federalist. I'm just saying, like, the points that you're making, the logic that you're using is the same logic.
Yeah, but the appeal to national sovereignty, at least in America, is an appeal to the consent of the people.
Well, the appeal to globalism is the appeal to the consent of the people.
Okay, so then what is your justification for that?
What's your justification for federalism? Hold on.
Hold
on. I want to answer that question. That was rhetorical. I already know your answer. You already answered this. You said it's because federalism won, right? We already decided federalism won.
No. This
right?
question isn't about federalism at all. It's not about
I know it's
anti-federalism,
not.
federalism. You keep trying to make it this.
But what
it's
justifies
like
federalism?
You keep trying to say, oh, it's a parallelism. No. So okay, what we agree on is going to require.
What justifies federalism?
Yo, in the case of the American Constitution and national sovereignty, yeah, it's an appeal to the consent of the people within particular already established state boundaries. Got it. Okay. So what are you proposing, that globalism is supposed to be a consent of nations to some global government?
Yes.
Where do you see this right now?
Well, where do you see the U.S. Constitution in 1750? Right?
So, no.
There were federalists then. There were federalists then.
Here's the thing. So, I mean, this is at this point, it's just mere ideology. Who's to say that like 200-300 years from now, yeah, like the governments around the world don't all like agree to consent to this? But where do you see that? Where do you see that?
Dude, there were a lot of issues with federalism, man.
Hold on.
There was like
Why
the
do you
13
keep bringing it back to federalism? I'm asking you about
because that's the parallel I'm drawing.
No, I understand. We already agree on that. The parallel here, right? The only parallel that matters is one of consent, right? So, are you talking about consent of individual people within the nations that currently exist, or are you talking about like consent from the nations themselves to some global authority?
Well, at the second, I think.
Okay, so then where do we see this right now? Where
we don't. It's not yet. It's not. There is no global constitution yet.
Okay, so
it doesn't exist.
What do you think about the United?
Yes,
what do you
exactly.
What do you think about the United
Me
Nations?
right now suggesting that there should be.
Yeah, stop filibustering. What do you think about the UN?
I think it's pretty good. It's got some problems.
What do you mean it's pretty good? No. I want. What's your analysis of the UN?
I really appreciate the science produced by the WHO. I really appreciate the science produced from what was shit, I forgot the name. They provide I think the WHO is a pretty good organization. Oh, the peace. What is it? The UN Human Rights Council. I think they do a lot of good work internationally. So those are some examples.
So here's the UN Charter, Chapter 1, Purpose and Principles.
Okay.